We should get started. Sorry for the late sending out of the agenda. I apologize. Bridget's here with the boys, and we have all sorts of baby stuff going on. But these were the things that we had identified at the end of last meeting, other than the policy pulse that Dr. Glover forwarded to us. It was all the things that we had identified last month. Jackie, did you get a chance to look at the September and October policy pulses? The September one was the revised policy for privacy
yes.
security.
The security.
And it does look like what they've done is they've taken out the component parts that become part of a fluid or changing document and have just left the policy statements. So it seems like, you know, the bulk of the policy stays the same. It just allows it to have a little bit more flexibility. Dr. Glover does mention Bill of Rights. Is that something that goes out and goes onto our website?
That's something we actually already have posted and updated.
How do you find it?
If you were to go to the, she just changed it. So hold on, let me look here. It's on the website. It is underneath. I want to say it's underneath district policies and plans.
Policies and plans?
Yep, and then underneath there in the left-hand column, there's data privacy and security.
And that would link.
And then that links you to a page where it lists me as the data officer, the data and safety security policy in its basics with a link to the full policy, and then the Parents' Bill of Rights.
So just out of curiosity, does the school send out anything that tells parents that, you know, these types of things are embedded in the website, or does somebody have to know to look for them?
We haven't put out any notification yet. If there would be something we would add into a newsletter about if we're into, and we haven't done that yet. So at this point, if someone was looking based on a complaint, we would tell them where those things are.
Yeah, I'm just curious because there are a lot of things. The reason I ask is there are a lot of things that have the requirement that notice be given. So I was just wondering if you do a blanket statement that, you know, these types of things are found in various places on the website, or just how you went about doing it.
It's part of it is handled through those annual notifications for those things that are required there. And then for any other announcement of the notification, the website itself is the announcement piece.
So that's what I'm asking. Those annual notifications, how do they go out?
They go out in the summer newsletter.
Oh, summer newsletter. Okay.
Yep, that kind of goes with the calendar and all the calendar and everything else we kind of do in the summer is that first round of things. All that tends to get sent out there. I don't know if this gets sent with it. I don't believe it does. But pretty much at this point, you know, kind of all those things we're required to have posted, most of them are here.
Mm-hmm.
And the district policies and plans.
So in looking it over, they just have removed the component parts that can be changeable and just leave the policy parts in place. They're not really changing that I can see anything else. They do ask us to identify who the district's data protection officer is. So that seemed to be the one place where we had to customize anything. If I remember correctly, yeah. So it seems that it's very similar, other than, you know, what's been deleted, to what is currently in policy. So not for this meeting coming up, but the December meeting. Do you think this is ready for discussion or are you suggesting that anything else need to be changed?
I don't have any need for anything else to be changed. In the previous policy, I believe we just went to job title in the policy and then we're specific to the website. That part, I don't know if that's changed, that it has to be actually listed in the policy.
According to the policy pulse, it does.
Okay, so that would be the only necessary change. You know, those other pieces that allowed us to get more specific. If, you know, if this group was comfortable with being more general, with more flexibility in it, I wouldn't have any objection to that.
Okay.
That's in there, but it certainly could go forward for December.
I think the reason they're doing it is it will make it more streamlined. You won't have, anytime that they come up with changes to these particular areas, we don't have to change the policy. We just have to change the working documents.
Yeah,
Which makes sense, at least
Yes.
from my perspective, as far as policy is concerned. Anything that is fluid should probably not be policy.
Yeah.
Jackie, are you okay with that?
Yep, I am. I'm here.
So are you hearing us through the phone now?
Yes, I am. Yeah, it was just a little glitchy, so I figured you were breaking up in and out, so I might as well I can hear clearly on my phone, so.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll be able to, keep connected here. I know for me, around this time of day, it start buffering a lot more, and
Yeah,
I get a lot of those pauses. So,
yep.
Dr. Glover, the October Policy Pulse has the Title IX and sex discrimination, and in the first paragraph, they actually say that we should be, we're strongly encouraged to consult with district council. So is this something that, does Gervin and Veloso, when something like this comes out, do they take a look at this and then make recommendations to school districts about how to move forward? I mean, it's kind of, do they leave it as the boilerplate, or do they actually take a look at it and, ask us to either, to make, how to move forward on it, I guess?
whenever there's an update out of the state, they tend to put out an information sheet on here's the policy, here's the changes, and here's our recommendations. They don't necessarily specifically comment on boilerplate language from Erie 1 or for NISBA, but they put out guidance language. I'm just looking quick to see if I see anything that just kind of pops up quickly, and I don't. But it doesn't mean it's not in there.
Okay.
To there. So they do offer guidance. It's just not it's just not part of the Erie process.
Okay. But it would be probably something that we should see if we can't gather some reaction from Gervin and Filazzo on it, or do you think that what's here?
Well, we can send it forward for him to have him take a look. Remembering that our folks at Erie also have legal backgrounds to them. They aren't attorneys, but they do have legal backgrounds. They vary a little bit. But it's certainly something we could have our, it looks like they're looking for names in here too.
Yeah. The reason I asked is in all the policy pulses that I have seen, this is the first time in the first paragraph they've suggested that you consult with counsel. So for me, that was something a little different. So I didn't know if because this could quickly lead down a road, for legal action, is it something that we should be waiting for guidance from them, or should we go forward with?
I think it would be a good idea to get a council to look at, because the customization here is about timelines.
Timelines, yeah.
So when it comes to timelines, what's the standard acceptable? How much time can we give ourselves? What's considered reasonable? The attorney will have a better grasp on. And they also will let us cut ourselves short. Saying.
Because it was 60 days. So are they looking to shorten that up? I mean, you know why they not specific on the number of days?
No, I'm not.
Okay. One of the other things that they do recommend is that we look at any other policies or documents that relate to this. So what might be other documents relate, what it says is any documents related to non-discrimination and anti-harassment in conjunction with one another. So other than the policies that address that, what other documents might be in school that,
Well, if they're looking for,
Yeah.
Jackie, can,
Yeah, before you, I never received those attachments. The only policy attachments that I received were the, for the data security and privacy of students and teachers and principals.
oh, okay. Well, then we will
I didn't
defer.
receive the one about non-discrimination.
I just sent it to you, Jackie.
Okay, I'll open it up.
So, to what other documents may be out there, code of conduct,
Oh, okay.
maybe those types of things, student handbook, maybe the course catalog, those types of things, maybe the type of documents that they're referring to that are guidance documents, they aren't policy documents. In some cases, they aren't regulatory, they're just informational. But even so, kind of those guidelines for the harassment pieces and the Title IX pieces may require that some type of disclaimer statement within them. Because the EEOC, for example, the equal opportunity is required to be on almost every document we send or that we have. And it may follow the same to here.
Jackie, did you get it?
Yep, I got it. I'm opening it now.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. I thought it was just
Oh.
the data and privacy ones that I.
Well, Jackie gets a chance to take a look at it. One of the things that they did talk about is training. And you're talking about Title IX coordinators, investigators, decision makers, persons designated by the district to facilitate an informal resolution receive specialized training, including on the regulations definition and definition of sexual harassment. Is this something that comes through BOCES? Would they
Yes.
the person or the group, I'm sorry, that would provide those kinds of trainings?
Yeah, that or our attorney group on occasion puts out these types of trainings.
So
Yeah.
how does that happen? Is that something that you just get a one-time training, or is this something that in those multiple things that they ask you to review at the start of the school years, is something like this embedded in that?
Yeah, for those, I haven't seen anything specific to training for this yet.
Well, this is a new component,
Yeah,
so,
generally what BOCES will do is they'll do a couple times a year for the training, then have it be an annual piece. We already do some sexual harassment training. That is required. We do that annually. We're just wrapped that up. This year we did it kind of auto tutorial this year because we're allowed to. And we kind of every other year that one year we bring in somebody from BOCES and they do it in person, and then we actually split folks this year. Our non-instructional folks we did in person, and our instructional folks we did online, through an online course that BOCES developed. And we do something similar with safety and the right to know training. But when this training comes up, we'll do something similar for getting it in so everyone gets the training on their annual basis in the Title IX, and then just keep carrying every year. The first ones I prefer to do in person because they're brand new. And so we bring the person in so they can have the conversations and ask the questions and have the things in hand with the expert in the room. And then once people get a good feel for it, then we back up to other medium.
Okay. Are you currently the Title IX coordinator, or who actually holds that position?
I think actually there's three of us because the policy talked about the civil rights officer, which are the
Uh-huh.
principals who are also Title IX. So I think it's all three administrators. We've always tried to have male, female in those capacities to address any gender concerns.
Okay, because it does say they do highly recommend that you have more than one
Yeah.
person, just to avoid any conflicts. So is this something that we should wait for that guidance document before we start talking about dates and, the customization pieces that they're asking us to look at? Because there's quite a bit of it.
I've noted down here just to get a hold of the attorney on it and double check the attorney language to see if we don't have that already.
Okay,
And then just see how they want to proceed from there, or how they'd recommend to proceed from there. I didn't notice a deadline in the language. I don't know if the Pulse mentioned, because sometimes you have to have it approved and posted by a certain date.
well, the change was effective August 14th, 2020.
Yeah, but that's,
So no, but I didn't see that it had to be done by a certain time, but
yeah. So I'll reach out to the attorney and see where it is. It wouldn't be the first time where it's been, okay, all the changes are set on August 14th, and then on October 20th, we get the information on it.
right. So I had to smile when I read it, because I thought, well, they certainly can't hold our feet to the fire.
Well,
That one, but it is something that probably should be in process. So, but I do think that rather than reinvent the wheel, that if the attorneys are going to make a suggestion as far as those timelines and some of those customizations, we should probably. Do you think that you would have something back that we could put it on our next agenda?
the next policy meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think we can do that.
Okay. Is that all right, Jackie?
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, there's definitely a lot to it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
looking at the new
Go ahead, Jackie.
with the harassment. No, just with the harassment piece, just I think it's a good idea to have the attorney look at it.
Yeah.
Just so we follow that, especially like the new grievance process, make sure we have that in place.
Right. It's the policies at one point they were moving to keep them kind of succinct, a couple pages long, basic general guidelines to follow. And the past two really major policy guidelines they're getting have been 20 pages. In fact, two of them are here. They're much more regulatory in nature than they are in policy in nature, for specifics and expectations and examples and information in them than they've been in the past.
Yeah.
So is this something you think that's the trend now, that they'll be looking at new policies that to make them?
Yeah, I really think it's being driven by the state, and the one policy, I want to say the first time the data privacy came through, or it might have been the first time the sexual harassment policy came through. I called up Erie One and said, this is like a 12-page document. What's going on? And they expressed to me that they go back to the state's guidance, and then they base their policies on what the state guidance is, and the state guidance was that long.
Well,
So, it's really looks like the state's kind of driving the expectation what the policy will look like. And, Erie One is kind of following up and making sure all those expectations are met, which means we get 21-page policies.
which makes it hard to
Mhm.
take it all in, I guess. So,
Yeah.
all right. So
A lot of I's and T's.
we'll push that one down to the next one and hopefully have a little bit more information to go on to do those parts that we need to do. So,
Okay.
one of the things that seems to be recurring, and we talk about it and we think we've addressed it, and then it seems to bubble up at different times, which indicates that there's a need from some, at least for me, some clarity, and it does have to do with volunteer coaches.
Mhm.
So I took a look at the school volunteer policy 3150, and I'm wondering if we just want to take that policy and then add a subcomponent to it that people who are volunteer coaches are still acting in a volunteer fashion, but they are different because they do have to have the certifications and qualifications that are required through New York State, and begin to talk about, how they do it, so that they either, if they have to make an application to um, the coach of the team that they want to volunteer on, or if they go through the athletic director, or what a good practice would be, but it would still have to come to the superintendent for recommendation and appointment by the board. So just to have some sense of, if somebody had any questions, that we could say, we put it in policy, and this is what we're looking for, that you'll be volunteers, but you still have to have all of those requirements. And that's going to be, and I figured now might be a really good time, because if we're going to be accepting Don Zarzicki's retirement, for purpose of retirement, resignation, then this may be the good time to start something with, an expectation. So Jackie, you've been, I know that Pete has volunteered, so I've seen what he has to do, and there's a lot of confusion sometimes. He doesn't, do who he goes to. It's like sometimes just throws up his hands like, well, I'll go up and I'll throw things at the wall and maybe something will stick. But you've done this process too. And how would you like to see it, or how do you think that the most efficient and effective way for us to do this?
I honestly think that I think it should come from the varsity coach. I think the volunteer, I thought about this. I think the volunteer goes to the varsity coach, and then the varsity coach recommends it to the athletic director, including all the paperwork that's required. And then I feel like the athletic director should push it to the superintendent.
That makes sense.
And then to the board. I feel like that's like the chain of command, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think then there's no one has to worry about checking with someone, or it kind of just, and it's kind of an easy flow chart that everyone can understand.
Yeah, makes sense to do it that way. So
Yeah.
Why don't I take a stab at coming up with some language to that regard, and Dr. Glover, do you think it's reasonable to put it into that policy, school volunteers?
Yeah, if we're going to define it, that's certainly the place to go.
Okay.
That's
So,
there. Yeah.
And we can kind of play around with that language, and hopefully have something in place for when we're back to business with coaches and kids and sports. So, all right. So
Yeah.
I think that's, it keeps recurring. So if that is the case, then we just need to make it more clear. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
The code of conduct, it's still hanging fire for us. We do have the new language that has been recommended. The review that was done, I know that Ms. Adams was the one who gave us the presentation. Was that that was just completely between the administrative team that did that language?
No, Ms. Adams was in charge of that, and she had conversations with folks, K-12. It wasn't necessarily carried in the traditional sense, as I understand it, like everyone in the same room and have conversations. But most of the focus of this one was to get the restorative justice language in for pieces to get into place. But there were conversations, as I understand it, that she had with different stakeholders about getting that language in.
Okay. And if we do not adopt those changes, they currently do not exist in the code of conduct, correct?
Right now, the language is still in the conduct pending approval or disapproval.
Okay.
Of course, if the language isn't approved, then we have to go back and well, we have to get a document that needs to, that it will be acceptable for approval. Whether it includes the restorative justice language or not.
Okay. One of the things I know that we have been interested in, of course, this is maybe the timing of this, bringing this request up, is that especially now when we're trying to open up a conversation about equity and, our policies there, that to have a much broader group take a look at it. But I do think that it is important to have that restorative language adopted, because we want to move in that direction, and in order for it to be implemented, we have to approve it. Jackie, what are your thoughts on, we tried to do the public meeting, but we had trouble getting people on. It was late. I don't know I actually have no idea how many people were even able to log on to hear it. So
I think that was the 4:00 meeting, right? When we had that? That's why. I mean, do you think it would be beneficial to have it presented again and encourage more people to attend, more stakeholders, students? We don't really ever have any students that attend, or like a student representative that has looked through it too. So when, Ms. Adams, if we go through it again, that they might provide some insight on it.
I would like to see that happen. Since, Dr. Glover, the requirement before we adopt the code of conduct is to have the public hearing. Did we really meet that threshold?
It depends. This is where in our spectrum, man, do you want to fit? Closer to my end of the spectrum or closer to your end of the spectrum?
Well, I would like to know if somebody questions us on changing language in the code of conduct, have we met our reasonable expectation that what happened was actually a public hearing?
I think if there were questions raised in regards to, we reached the threshold of having stakeholder improvement and having opportunities for individuals to make comment to it, I think that answer is yes.
Okay.
To there. Also remember middle of COVID when all this was going on in the first round of it.
Well, that's true, but we've been asking to have more comprehensive conversation pre-COVID. So we can't just hang it all on COVID. So I do think that it should come back up for discussion. We could let people know that in the preliminary or in the final, well, we can open it up to public comment right after the presentation, right? We could do that.
I think that's what we tried to do, right? The last time.
Yeah, we did, but I don't think we had anybody
comment. Yeah.
Yeah. And the problem for me is I don't see a chat function or a list of participants, so I have no idea, as presider, who is actually listening, so I had no idea of whether we actually even had somebody other than the group of us in the room. So I do think that needs to come back up onto an agenda. I haven't seen what we are looking at for next month. Will we have a presentation from Liz Cole?
I'm confirming that tomorrow to see if she is going to be coming on. I did reach out to her the day after. Oh, hold on.
Your lights go out? I don't know if you can see that, Jackie. He just went into the dark.
Yeah.
Mine all the time at school.
If you wanted evidence that the energy project is underway, right there it was. That's new. I know Ms. Cole has the date in her calendar. I just have to confirm that nothing's changed since then. But it is planned to have her talk to the board next week about that remote, the remote mental health piece that's there. Doesn't mean we couldn't have two presentations on the same night. Sure, we could, but
It becomes very long in the meeting, right?
yes, it does.
But I do think we should do it. Do you think we could add it to the December meeting and make sure that we leave enough time, or if you will know tomorrow whether it's confirmed? That
Yeah,
she's-
I should, if she gets right back to me. If I hear back from Ms. Cole and she says, sorry, I can't do it, I have to bump it to December, I'll have Ms. Adams set up for November.
Right, because we're not asking her to change her presentation. We're just asking her to re-give it. So,
we will have a presentation each month.
okay,
Whether it's the mental health first and then the code of conduct, or the opposite. We'll have at least one per month.
okay. Jackie, do you think that'll work?
Yeah, that should work. And
Okay.
I mean, maybe we should just encourage, I would really like to hear from students and what they think. You know, if we could maybe get some volunteers that have looked at it in that stakeholder group. I think it would be good to hear from them, especially if we're moving towards the restorative justice piece where they have, more ownership of, their conflicts.
Yeah.
So,
Dr. Glover, do you want to contact Julie to see if she has some people that she could invite to, I don't know, maybe if she had students or had contact with any of the students who took a look at the code of conduct and worked on that restorative plan?
And I'm not sure entirely with whom she spoke. Part of that is just not remembering because it was last year, and some of that's just not knowing. My guess is for students who were involved probably would have been kids who have graduated, but were part of that beginning of that voices class. But I'm sure there was at least a junior. If that broader group was part of the conversation, I can think of a couple of this year's seniors that would have been involved. But I'll talk with Ms. Adams about kind of expectation for next presentation and about some, hearing some of the feedback from some of the kids that are involved in it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. And speaking of, so we'll aim for either the November or December board meeting for that. So that's good. Okay, and student member of the Board of Education. I did find a sample policy online. It was from Brunswick Brittenkill Central School District.
Mhm.
And I do think that they still have an active student member. We do have to create a policy and bring that I'm not sure if you bring the policy or you just bring the idea of having a student member on the board to our voters. So according to the law book, we have to, on May, it has to be part of our ballot. So if
Right.
we want to do this. So do we have to have the policy done ahead of time, Dr. Glover?
I will need to double check with legal on that for how that will draw up into the bond. Whether I don't think that the community has to approve the policy. The board
So
does.
just the okay. So just the idea of having a student.
Yes, but
So
to alter the board requires an act of the community. So that that would be no different if we were extending to 5 years rather than 3 years of a term, or going from at-large positions to board-specific seats or vice versa. That's where the legal requirements come into place for that student piece. But I don't think the community votes on the policy, but I want to double check with the attorney just to make sure.
okay, that begs the question, the cart before the horse. Do we have the policy and then go to the voters, or do we wait for the voters to tell us whether they agree that we should extend it and then write the policy.
I'll ask which drives which as part of the questions.
Okay? Because I don't know if it's just,
Right.
one, if people don't agree, then, we don't need the policy. But if people do, we would have to have it. So I don't know if we just have something in the wings once that
Right.
passes. If it passes, would we have to adopt the policy before they could have a seat, or does it just?
Yep. Because, that also is the question of if the voters say yes to the seats, then when's the next time that a student starts?
Would be July, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, possibly.
Possibly. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think the community votes on the student. I think that's an appointed, piece.
Right.
So
That's identified.
That's there. So it could be a July 1st start. It may be policy driven.
Because they give you, I'm looking at, that doesn't number it, but there are several different ways that you can select a student, but it does have to be a senior.
Yes.
But the Brunswick one said that they have a junior in the wings,
Yeah. They
Sits
put
in
in training. Yeah.
sits in the public area and then comes in. So it sounds like they have a nice formation of student
Yeah.
government. So that sounds like would be a good plan. So Dr. Glover, you will check on that
Yep.
one?
Yep.
Okay, and then the only other that I had written down was the exit interview template for questions. Were you able to?
Yes. Actually, if you were to go into board docs underneath the draft meetings, I put up a mock draft meeting of this meeting. And in there, I have the exit interview, which has the interview template and then the draft survey template to go along with it.
All right.
It's there. Underneath the exit interview, I have the action calendar updated in there as well with the extra column. We'll need to look over it at one point to make sure I shifted everything where I was supposed to and didn't miss some things. Volunteer coaches, I just put the policies that we talked about before, but I think we have that covered. But under the student board member, I have, they didn't have a boilerplate at Erie 1. The last time they had one was back 2005. So I have that information from Erie 1. There was some information when we last talked about this, and it was, I want to say Mary and Marlon. Marlon was still on the board. So it's been back a couple years. Kind of the last time the conversation came up. So in it is the page out of the law book that kind of speaks to those pieces. And I think it's the Britain Kill policy is also in that one file after there. So there's some additional information there for you to look at. Also a policy from North Tonawanda.
All right.
So there's more information to look at. I guess it's the short version there.
All right. All right. Well, I am not adept enough. I've one time many years ago split my screen and did multiple things, but I don't remember how to do that. So I don't, for me to do that, I'd probably drop this meeting. So I will go back and check that.
Yeah, so I guess there's some things you can review between now and when I check with the attorney. And then at the next meeting, if this continues to be a topic, we can talk about what the attorney said versus what some of these examples are and then move from there.
Okay, and so what did the attorney say about board teams doing the interviews?
I have an email from, is it Alex is his name? that I'll need to forward to everybody, that's here. To the board teams, is that previous email we talked about. That said it could, but not recommended. But to some of the questions on, what do we do with the paperwork afterward? Hold on, no, I'm scrolling through the emails. It's all in the same thread, so I have it all in one spot. It's exit interview related documentation is typically kept in an employee personnel files. And then it talks about retention schedules and what we're required to do into there. I will forward you that information. You want me to forward it to the full board?
Yes, please.
Okay. So that way everyone can see it.
Mhm.
There, I just forwarded it on so you can take a look at it.
Okay. Now, you said it was on board docs and there's in a draft.
What was in board docs? Yeah, so
This-
so if you go to meetings to where the arrow is,
I know, and go up for draft, but
yep.
I didn't know to look there in order to get this prior to the meeting. So are we
Yeah,
going to do that? Because we can't, Jackie and I can't share that way.
Right, yeah. Drawn up for you to take a look at and review and decide if you like it or not.
Okay.
So take a look at it and because basically part of it is just kind of here's the new information with the information to be able to back things up, plus the items planned for the next board agenda meeting. It was just if we were to do this, here's what it might look like. Do we like this? Do we not like this? And then let me know.
Okay, so who, if we had items to say next time I have something on the volunteer coaches, and we did it this way, what's the process for getting something on board docs?
It would be to contact my office, just like you would with any other agenda. Whether it's a regular board.
I actually have never added anything to an agenda. So,
Yeah. So
to that point.
if you were looking to add something to a regular agenda, you contact my office, and basically say, I would like blank added to the agenda for the next meeting. I think Bob's the last one who's had something added into an agenda and an email to everybody so everybody knew. But it can be done in a phone call. And then I let everyone know that it's been requested that blank's been added to the board agenda, just so everyone knows that it's been added in. And I would think we could follow that same process for here. So, and so you had it, here's the committee agenda, right, that you put together and you sent to us, right? Okay, so I can take that can become the framework for the agenda, and then I can fill it in.
Okay. Jackie, thoughts on how to go about with an agenda?
Yeah. Well, I am unable to open it right now. I'm trying, but my internet is not great. Oh, here it comes. It seems like a lot. I mean, in my opinion. But I mean, so I guess we just forward stuff to Gina and she would be the one to put it on? Is that?
Yeah, Gina does generally builds the agendas for me for most of the pieces, and she and I work together on making sure everything gets there. That's there. And the district clerk, when we have one, for everything to get into there. But it keeps, everything you need for each discussion item is here, and it's in one spot.
Okay.
It's there. Yeah, and it's extra work. There's no question, but
yeah, I mean, that's the one thing. It's opening one tab instead of you know, your email and documents and stuff. I mean, I guess we could try it and see. I mean, Ian, I feel like you're the one that this is putting more on you.
Of course, one of the things that I find, and I found this with the equity committee, they wanted to start an equity folder on Google Drive, which
Mhm.
actually makes a lot of sense to do that. But I'm working on a Mac, and for me to communicate with Google on my
Oh, yeah.
computer and my system, it's it's very labor intensive for me to do that, and it doesn't always work. So I'm not reluctant in the idea of sharing. It's not that. It's just my hesitation comes from the fact that I have to figure out the technical components that I need to follow. Like there are things that I want to put into that folder. I have yet to figure out how to get there that are sitting on my
Yeah.
computer. So it's not that I don't want to do it or because I think the more transparent we are with the agenda and the information, the better we are served. My hesitation comes from, you know, just being responsible for getting that stuff off my computer and into some other format because it's multiple steps for me to move things. And if I don't do it correctly, it doesn't happen. So I'm just trying to process in my mind what I would have to do because I don't operate in the Google Drive and, you know, so would it be better for me to go in there and do my documents first there? Would it be easier than to open up the things that I have for new documents, I mean? Is that, I gotta figure, see, I'm just trying to process it, but you don't need to worry about my process. I will try to figure it out. So, well, that's good. All
And
right.
I have no preference one day or another. This is just here's a thoughtful organization that can put things out there so folks can look at it. If you want to go this way, cool. If you don't want to go this way, cool. I have no preference.
Okay.
It's just, helping to be able to facilitate, because I know, Ann, sometimes it's, you have challenges getting things opened.
Yeah.
There too, where you're clicking a link, your Mac can do whatever it needs to do, clicking the link and it does it for you rather than having to worry about other pieces, like where did this attachment go? Which is why I try to send you more links now in the weekly report than I do documents, because folks having problems with attachments. So just an idea. That's why it's still in drafts and not public. It's just an idea.
Okay. So I promise I will try to figure all of that out because I have to share things for the equity committee. So it makes sense that I should be able to, if I figure it out there, I can figure out how to do it here. Okay. So for our next meeting, we do have to take a look at if we can, the Title IX and sex discrimination.
Yeah.
We'll look at the volunteer coaches, the actual language on that policy edition. We'll wait to hear on that's a pending, the student board members. We'll hear from the order in which we need to do things from the attorney.
Okay.
And we will have to take a look at if there's any, Jackie, the exit interviews. And one of the things I think that, because I can't, that's another thing. I have to teach myself on one machine to get to another. Oops. So, and I will figure it out. So Dan told me to visit Dr. Google. It's been very, very helpful. So it does tell me how to do that. And one of the things I think that we need to do, so that we also have to revisit that calendar for review of the plans and notifications.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We called it an action calendar?
Yep.
Okay. And we need to make sure that all of the plans that need to be, because we are, like the code of conduct, we haven't completed that process yet. And we actually haven't completed the process for I call it the CSE plan, but there's a much longer name. So, we have to make sure that we get them in the pipeline and do what we need to do so that we're on track with reviews and things like that. So, does anybody else have anything else?
And just a couple things. One for a point of clarification on that privacy, the data privacy policy, the 5676
Mm-hmm.
for the December meeting. Is that a first read or a discussion item?
Since we have had the discussion on the policy and we really aren't, other than the deletions, changing anything, I would
Right.
suggest that it be the first read.
Okay.
And then if people do not feel comfortable, we can back it off to a discussion.
Okay. The second item is, at the last meeting, we talked about 3 policies moving forward in the agenda as a discussion.
As a
And that was-
discussion for this,
For November.
right.
And that was the extraordinary circumstances policy, the policy on remote working, and the policy on remote learning.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure they were there when we
For
had.
November, because they're not required policies, just want to make
Right.
sure that the board wants us to, feels that we should move in that direction or not.
Okay.
Jackie, was there anything else that you could think of?
Nope. I think that's it.
All right, so I have to do my in-service training on getting to board docs and all those things. So, but other than that, I think we're in good shape on this stuff, and I will try to get. Now, would you prefer if we put something on board docs? How are we going to tell people that we do that? I mean, if I were to do that, just put some language together on the volunteer coach to add to the current policy. If I figure out how to get it on there,
Now, remember,
how do I tell people it's there?
board docs in its current structure will not allow you to use it as a repository in that way.
Okay.
So, and
So
what it
you're
will
going to
allow
have
us
to
to
send
do-
it to Gina.
Yeah,
Right.
what board docs does is it lets you set up agendas.
Right. And
And
if this
then-
were to go in, because this is actually the agenda for next meeting will be the Title IX policy, the volunteer language for the volunteer policy, exit review of interview, exit interview questions, and action calendar. So I mean that really is our agenda. So if nobody has anything to add, if I could get that to Gina easily, but if I have the language for the coach, how do I volunteer coaching thing? How do I let people know that it's there?
I think you send it to Gina or myself, we get it into the system for you, and then it's an email to everybody.
I'm just thinking this is like repetitive. I'm not sure. I guess I still have to think of.
In some ways, it's yes and no, and I can understand why it's a repetitive piece. But remember, what we're doing is building an agenda. So when we build that agenda, it eventually, if this is the route to go, we're going to say this is going to go public, so the public can see, the documentation we're talking about. It's also where you can tell the rest of the board to say, we've built the agenda, and it's currently in drafts. I just put up language about volunteer coaches. If you want to go look, here is the link. Or please look at
They'll access their own board docs, correct?
They'll go through their own board docs and they'll be able to get into the program and they will be able to see it because everyone on the board has access to the draft agendas.
Okay. All right.
So that's how the board would be able to see it. You just have to notify them that it's in there.
And then somebody pulls it, that becomes active. All right. So is it a week ahead of time that it should become active?
However you want to do it. that would be up to us. Since since the subcommittee here is a work group, it's whenever we wanted to make it active. It's unless the board wants to have a conversation and kind of set expectations for subcommittees on public announcing and agenda and those pieces. But the board would set the rules for its own subcommittees.
I think we ought to just try it out before we
Yeah.
make it,
Agreed.
requirement. Jackie, what are your thoughts as far as how to work as a committee, just the committee part? How much?
So-
Yeah.
I mean, I totally understand what you're saying, because it's kind of like you're putting it all together and sending it to Gina, who then is like putting it together and then sending it to all of us. Like, it seems like repetitive, like you said. I think the only positive to this is to have it like public can view it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, just like our board meeting. Because, I mean, I would hope that maybe if we did do that, more people would take a look at these, and maybe be able to have some insight
Mm-hmm.
and share with us. But I mean, it seems a little like for you on your end, I think it's
I just have to
Kind
figure
of.
it out, I guess. But how
Yeah.
much ahead would you like to see? Do you think we should have things out there? As far as
I mean,
having it-
I think a week might be pushing it, right? I think that's kind of difficult to do. I mean, what if we, if our meetings are on Mondays, make it active so people have the weekend?
Okay.
Like, that's pretty significant. I mean, I think, I don't know if I'm not giving them enough time, but I feel like that's almost 4 days to,
Okay. So
take a look. And
so maybe the first time we'll try to be active at least by the Friday before the meeting or Thursday before the meeting.
yeah.
Okay. I'll try
I
to
mean,
work
what do you
backwards.
think? Because I feel like you have a lot of this on your plate.
Well, I have to admit, I wanted to get things out to people earlier, but we ended up with family stuff going on here. So I
Oh,
forgot
gosh,
what day
yeah.
it was. I just forgot what day it was. So, but if I know that I'm locked into the working backwards, I can do a better job of making that happen. So, but I just want to make sure that I've got the right, I'm hitting the right note here as far as the dates are concerned.
Uh-huh.
So I will try to have everything to Gina by the Wednesday before next meeting so that it can go live for that
Uh-huh.
Thursday. So if I
Yeah.
get it to Gina by when, does that give her enough time, Dr. Glover?
Yeah, I think it will. Because the other thing to remember is, like, I get done with this meeting. Tomorrow I'll meet with Gina on here are the things that have to be at the regular board meeting. And I'll give her at the same time, here are the topics that are going to be up at the next agenda meeting. So unless there's going to be a difference between what you and I wrote down, she'll already have this, which happens sometimes. There's the structure will already be there. It's just a matter of filling in that structure.
Okay. All right, so I'll try to do it early on Wednesday. All right. All right, well, very good. So, and it's 7:00. So, I guess that our time is up. So this is good. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see everybody, next week? Again, I forgot what day it is.
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
right?
What's that?
Tomorrow?
A lot of committee meeting, yes.
Yeah.
So what's that? The
All
Audit
right.
committee tomorrow.
audit committee, that's right. All right, very good. Yes, I knew there was something on the calendar. All right, well, have a good evening and we'll see everybody later. Thanks, Jackie, for making it work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you
All right.
very much. Good night.
Bye.